keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio. Once again with your host Nick Burnaby here on UCY.TV. Thank you all for tuning in and welcome back to the show. It was a pleasure being with you on Monday. We had a few technical difficulties, but we worked through them pretty quickly and we got the show on the road. Anyway, we got an awesome show in store for you tonight. Plenty of things going on. Apparently there's some major police brutality issues going on in St. Louis once again. We're going to have some live updates from that, as well as a bunch of other news stories that we covered earlier today and over the week. Make sure you catch us Monday through Friday, same place, same time for the Anti-Media Radio. I'm here Monday and Wednesday. We have SM Gibson Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Levon on Friday for a little bit of a different show. Thank you. I want to give a quick shout out to Ponder for the intro and outro music, for the awesome music. Always thankful for that. Also have awesome guests in the studio tonight. My Wednesday co-host, or one of our co-hosts for Wednesday, Jake Anderson. How you doing tonight, man?
Good, Nick. Keeping my eye on this Periscope here on what's going on in St. Louis. Can't tell if this is live or not, but yeah, basically they're activating their cute little line of police riot squad activity and marching down the street, tapping their batons and clearing out what looks like a peaceful assembly. So I don't know what's going on. Hopefully, Pam Beers will call in.
Yeah, I mean, once again, it looks like we're seeing overly militarized response to, seemingly legitimate concerns. But we're going to get a little more into that once we have our live updates come in. We're going to have a guest on that's going to tell us a little bit more about what's going on in St. Louis. We're also joined on the line by our co-host, E.B. Schwartz. What's going on, man?
Not much, Nick. Kind of out of the loop, but yeah, I was seeing that it just will not quiet down there, and they're not responding to the protesters' demands. I mean, which really means gutting the entire PD. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen there. I don't know what kind of resolution there's going to be.
Well, I'm glad people they're finally standing up, and saying we're not going to take it anymore,
Yeah.
It has to happen everywhere if we're going to make change.
Exactly, man. The problem is that when it happens in an isolated place like this, they send in a bunch of cops and, National Guard and who knows what else from all over the place to go crack down on these, several hundred, several thousand people that decide to stand up, whether it's in St. Louis or, Ferguson or wherever the next one kicks off. Because as long as we have this militarized police and as long as we have this shoot first policy and and all this stuff. We're going to always continue to have these issues. It seems like, anyway, from my perspective, we're going to continue to have these problems with the cops until some major reforms happen.
And it's going to be the TPP, if it actually passes, that's gonna turn the tide, because you're going to see middle class of all creeds and colors and backgrounds see their lifestyle erode overnight, and that's the reality of it, man. It's not a critical mass yet, because it's just affecting the minority population. But once it hits the people that are the breadwinners for their families and they lose their jobs to people willing to work for slave labor overseas, that becomes the turning point.
Yeah, man, that's a good point. It's gonna take things to get a lot worse before a lot of the people right now that are apathetic to actually stand up and get out in the streets. As you said, man, the middle class is still kind of insulated. It's shrinking. The middle class is shrinking. It's becoming more and more.
It's collapsing.
Yeah, it's becoming less and less like a middle class and more like just a huge class of a bunch of poor people, a couple thousand people up there that own everything, and that's becoming more and more of an issue. Now, before we move on to some of these other stories, first we're going to go to PM Beers out of Los Angeles. She's got a couple of updates for us from what's going on in St. Louis. I don't even know what's going on. Like, what started all this? What's going on over there?
Hey, Nick, how's it going?
Pretty good. Just taking in all this escalation, because this seems to just came out of nowhere. I didn't even.
Yeah, but I'm not really into conspiracy theories, but man, this is making my head spin because it's so textbook. So this morning, there was, I don't know at what time, but at some time today there was a protest because last year the cops in St. Louis killed a person, and I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, Kajame Powell. They killed him last year, so there was a protest because it's the anniversary today of that killing. Coincidentally, this morning at 11:30, the cops St. Louis cops went to a really rough neighborhood to serve a warrant, and the cops' story doesn't match with the women's story, as always. So basically, the cops' story was they went to serve the warrant, and multiple people had guns. Some of the people with guns ran out the back door, and the guy they killed today, Mansour Balde, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name either. They're saying that the guy that they shot and killed had a gun. But then the story that, like, in the neighborhood, the story is, no, that's not what happened. The cops just burst in there and started shooting up the place. Of course, people are outraged because they're just tired. They're sick and tired of the fearing for their lives, like constantly, every day they're afraid they're going to get killed if they're going to be next. So you have these protesters who are already out there agitated, already protesting, and then they kill this guy, and then of course, like, cops come to, like, do whatever it is their job is, but they also, like, bring shit tons of cops and a big giant armored vehicle called a Bearcat. So now, like, it looks like a fucking war zone. So, of course, people are going to become agitated and more escalated. And so at that point, when I first heard that, like, about, like, that it was probably 6 o'clock their time when I heard about that. So I'm thinking, okay, like, the cops are going to escalate and they're going to incite a riot. But then all the cops backed off, they left, and everything was cool. And the people were just, like, marching around the city, like, protesting, and everything was cool. So, okay, everything's going to be fine. But, like, the way I see it, if there's going to be a riot or not, it depends on how the cops are going to be. And then when the cops come back with the riot gear and try to stop the protest, and they actually try to squash it, that's when it's going to escalate. And right now, around, I think it was like around 9:30 their time, I heard that they started throwing tear gas with no warning whatsoever. And there was also shooting rubber bullets and stuff. And so after that happened, everything escalated. And there was a car set on fire, and then at some point there's an abandoned house that is on fire now.
Wow, it sounds like things are getting pretty bad out there quickly.
Yeah, and I think it's going to just get worse. Like, the more the cops escalate, it's going to get worse.
Well, it looks like they're. I mean, I'm watching the Periscope you shared on Twitter, and I honestly I can't tell if it's live or not. It doesn't look. It looks a little earlier because of the light in the sky, but it definitely looks like there's a lot of activity going on near their main street, and they're doing the baton tapping, which means they're trying to clear people out. Do you know, like, when did the rubber bullets happen? Do you know how recently that was? You said like around Eastern time, so that's about like an hour ago or something?
I think so. I can't tell you for sure, but that's when I found out about it.
Yeah,
but that tapping the batons on the ground, like, what the fuck is that? Like, that just, like, it feels like war or something.
Yeah, it looks. I mean, and in this Periscope, the girl recording it was literally screaming out loud, you know, "What the f are you doing? You know, why are you tapping your batons?" Because literally, it was a completely peaceful assembly.
Yeah, I can't even watch live stream anymore. It traumatizes me too much.
Yeah, Patty, back to your point that you were making about how the cops are many times the cause of the riots. You know, a lot of times it's protesters that have legitimate grievances, and yeah, maybe an intense protest, but it almost never turns into a riot until the cops show up in militarized gear and riot gear and try to break it up and send people off on their way. In fact, there was a study that came out from the Justice Department, of all people, that showed that the militarized response in Ferguson is what triggered the riots.
Exactly.
And now they're recalling a lot of that equipment from Ferguson because they don't trust the cops with that equipment anymore. And in fact, Justin King, one of our journalists, was on the ground in Ferguson the second time around after the grand jury failed to indict. And he basically witnessed the same thing. He said, you know what, it wasn't a riot until the cops started throwing tear gas, and then people started smashing windows, setting cars on fire, and, you know, doing the...
Well, even from the very beginning in Ferguson, like on the day when they killed Mike Brown, they were having a vigil. Like, they were having like a memorial, like a funeral, and then riot cops showed up and tried to break that up, and that's what popped it all off.
Yeah, I mean, and this seems to be a recurring issue that we're seeing over and over again. And once again, it's pretty much people of color that are being increasingly killed by the cops, and of course the community comes out with this legitimate grievance, and they're out there protesting, trying to voice their opinion in, you know, what's supposedly a free country, and we're supposed to be able to do this stuff. And then they show up and they just try to beat people up with batons and shoot tear gas, and they even, you know, shooting tear gas at journalists and shooting people in the head with tear gas and rubber bullets and stuff like that. And it's just over and over and over. We keep seeing this continue to happen.
Even like the president of the police commission of the LAPD, like, I swear to you, he's like inciting people.
Yeah. You said you were out there yesterday, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because we're gonna be covering police topics for the first half an hour here. So go ahead and tell us about that as well.
Okay, so I went to the police commission meeting, which is 9:30 on Tuesday mornings, which is the most inconvenient time for most people who have jobs in schools. And I went there, and there was people from Stop LAPD Spying were there, LA Can activists were there, Black Lives Matter was there, Youth Justice Coalition was there. Like, all of the, like, some of the really awesome activist groups in LA were all there. It was like about 20 people. There probably a little bit more if it was a more, like, fashionable time of day. And people were, like, just calmly addressing the police commission, because a week before that, Black Lives Matter had come, and they're going to do a people's tribunal of the cops who killed Isaac Ford, Antonio Villegas, and Charlton Wampler. So they wanted to serve Chief Beck a subpoena for their people's tribunal, but he wasn't there. And then yesterday, again, Chief Beck wasn't there. And but the day after the last time they were there, LAPD shot and killed a woman named Rudell Jones. and they said she had a knife. They said she had stolen $80 worth of merchandise. But then a witness said that she was running away and they shot her in the back. So that was the very next day after they had come and pled with the police commission again. And then, so yesterday, everyone was back because they killed Riddell Jones. And people were, like, calmly, people were calm, they had, like, 2 minutes to talk, and they're calmly airing their grievances, which is probably, like, the most healthy way to deal with it. But Steve Sobroff, the president of the police commission, he was either ignoring people or interrupting them, like the whole time. And people only get 2 minutes to speak, and they're in the middle of speaking, and he's interrupting them. And like they'll call their name up to speak, and then they'll start speaking, and then he'll say, "You need to state your name." And like there's people who, like Melina Abdullah from Black Lives Matter, like they know her name. But they're just being ridiculous. And then there was a point where Jasmine Richards of Black Lives Matter, like, just basically told them, like, if we don't get justice, you're not going to sleep all at night. And then Soboroff's like, "Are you threatening me?" Like, in the middle of her time to speak. And they just kept, like, repeatedly interrupting her. And this is happening to everyone. Like, everyone's just trying to, like, express themselves and express their grief and, like, plead. Like, everyone just feels so helpless, and a lot of these people are fearing for their lives. And he's so disgusting the way he speaks to people, and I feel like it's just inciting more uprising. And twice he threw a tantrum and walked out, and the whole meeting ended early because he couldn't just sit there and listen to people.
Is there any truth to some of these reports I've been reading about how Black Lives Matter has been kind of infiltrated by these provocateurs who are starting to, throw rocks and all that, and these guys are not even from town. They're, like, getting bussed in and stuff. I've been reading all kinds of stuff like that.
I don't know. I can only speak to the experiences that I personally have, and, like, I haven't seen anything like that.
Yeah, same here. I mean, there's plenty of reports that go around saying that kind of thing, but my firsthand experience with Black Lives Matter activists here in San Diego doesn't show any of that.
Also, there's like rumors that anonymous, like they're beeping with anonymous, but like I see nothing.
Yeah,
nothing. When I read that, I'm like, my gut feeling is that's bullshit.
Yeah, no, that's not. It was a very small. I mean, it was a personal statement, and it was blown out of proportion. But on that point, I do have this next story, and we're gonna, Patty, if you can, keep us updated. If you hear anything else going on in St. Louis, please let us know, because that's something to keep an eye on. It doesn't seem like it's turned into a full-blown riot at this point in time, but it definitely has escalated, and who knows what's going to happen overnight or for the rest of the night. So we're going to keep an eye on that. But on that point, we have this...
So the cops are rioting, so...
What's that?
The cops are definitely rioting.
The cops? So we have this awesome article up on the Anti-Media by Carrie Wedler, and it's about some of these Black Lives Matter activists that were able to speak directly to Hillary Clinton the other day. And, there was a big fuss made about them interrupting Bernie Sanders, and... the fact of the matter is, we spoke about this last week on the show. I think it was a completely legitimate interruption, and the points that were made during that time were articulated very well. The follow-up interviews that were conducted were articulated very well. Now, because of what has gone on and how much it trended and how many people started talking about it, now a lot of these politicians are being forced to make concessions. We've seen the Bernie Sanders campaign make a bunch of concessions to the Black Lives Matter movement. In fact, Bernie Sanders hired someone from the movement to work in his campaign, and he's adjusting his platform to really express his views now about the black struggle. Now, these other activists from the Black Lives Matter movement recently spoke to Hillary Clinton a couple days ago. And the article we have on the Anti-Media is about how one of the guys that spoke to her, literally right to her face, he called her out on her support of the prison industrial complex, and he called her out on her previous policy lobbying that she's done to support the prison industrial complex, including the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994, which Bill Clinton signed into law, but Hillary Clinton provided a lot of heavy lobbying for this bill. And following that bill from 92 to 2000, the amount of prisoners in the U.S. increased almost 60%. Okay, and this is, of course, done by a Democrat president with the support of a Republican Congress. Both parties are pretty much guilty in this case. But the thing that was amazing was that the gentleman that was speaking to Hillary Clinton, he literally said, you know what, we have a huge problem with mass incarceration in the United States, and there's no getting around the fact that you are at least partially responsible for it. And she was just kind of dumbfounded, and she was just kind of like, yeah, and she kind of agreed with it at the end. And here's the thing with Hillary Clinton, you know, she talks and she's like, she responds to the people that were the activists that were talking to her, and she acts like she's gonna, you know, do something to roll back, you know, the oppression of black people. But Jake just wrote an article the other day about how Hillary Clinton is taking massive money from the private prison industry.
Yeah, two of her biggest donors are the two biggest private prison.
Exactly. And, you know, we all know the private prison industry is also many of the same organizations that are behind the lobbying to keep the drug war in place, right? Now, the other thing we also know is that the drug war is one of the most racist institutions that has ever existed in the United States. People of color are at a much higher rate per capita arrested for drug crimes and thrown in prison. You know, the whole crack epidemic that was going on in the 80s and 90s, and
which was CIA, infiltration.
Which many would say was, you know, very, very scandalous, to say the least.
Literally a false flag operation.
So Hillary Clinton, we have her here, and the whole point of our article is that this guy called her out on it. But you know, we go on later in the article to point out that, you know, Hillary Clinton, while she can say whatever in the hell she wants about Black Lives Matter, she can say whatever the hell she wants about the black struggle. The truth of the matter is that throughout her entire history in politics, in the Senate, as the First Lady, and now in 2016 as a presidential candidate, everything goes to show that she is not for the black struggle or helping the black struggle. She is for incarcerating black people. That is what her record says.
Well, the video there is stunning to me, the level of defensiveness and disrespect she shows to the black lives. I was stunned at how, she usually tries to maintain a modicum of professionalism when she's speaking. She's just outright hostile, and I think she's taken off guard. And quite frankly, I think she's stunned and shell-shocked that this quote-unquote populist revolution is escalating at the rate it is. And I don't know what's going to happen to Hillary Clinton.
Oh, man, she's going to be the nominee, but she's dead in the water. You know, we all know that. So, you know, here's the other thing. Carrie, who wrote the article, made a great point on, is that she also indirectly supported the militarization of the police because she was such a huge cheerleader of all this foreign policy, the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan. Now she backtracked, if I knew what I knew now, I wouldn't have supported the war in Iraq. Well, how about Libya? How about every other war that you supported? Because according to Hillary Clinton's record, she basically supported every war that the U.S. ever, you know, went into while she was in politics. But because of all of her support for the war in Iraq, Afghanistan, that led to the building of all of these MRAPs and all of this militarized gear, which in turn led to the program 1033, which was to get rid of all this gear and then arm up all these police departments with all this militarized gear. So indirectly, Hillary Clinton is also responsible for the militarization of the police. DB, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, you can always tie it back to a commercial/investment aspect. And you have to look at what she owns, you know, not only in her own portfolio, but people she works with. They're all part of this same machine. I mean, the police get trained by the Israelis, dude, and it's been that way. And, you know, the 51st state probably is really in charge, and that's really where you fall down the rabbit hole and wonder why the militarization is taking place. Well, they're setting up a control grid. I mean, and there's only really one reason to do that, because they fear a collapse. And then they fear 330 million pissed off armed people. So the only way they can kind of get ahead on that is to cow people, into obedience first. And the great thing about it is it's not working.
Exactly, and proof is in the pudding right here in St. Louis. People are just out there standing up to these Bearcats, armored vehicles, MRAPs, whatever you want to call them. Now, there's another point in the second half of this video. It's a two-part video from this organization called Good, which is a journalist organization. They're the ones that obtained this exclusive video between Black Lives Matter and Hillary Clinton. I got a quote that Kerry pulled out of the video. And the gentleman the gentleman that was talking to Hillary Clinton and confronting her was talking about how we've got to go about changing the hearts and minds of the population so that people aren't inherently racist anymore. Because the fact of the matter is that there's still a bunch of people that are scared of other races, and the Donald Trump campaign is proof that there's a shitload. It's pretty popular on the right to be racist against brown people and black people. And Mexicans are now apparently you can talk bad about Mexicans if you're Donald Trump, and a bunch of people in the Republican Party are going to agree with you, and that's apparently okay now. But the gentleman in the video, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Nick, you have to be a complete moron to go against what's the fastest growing demographic that actually votes. And they're going to eventually start, the Latin voters going to eventually start their own party because they're kind of a hybrid, and they want something with the democratic social kind of, slant where we're going to provide for people because we're rich, but the Republican slant of fiscal responsibility. And God forbid we get a unity party with 43% of the voting public.
Yeah, man. That's a good point. Yeah, the Hispanic demographic is in 2016 is going to be the swing demographic. Whoever can get that demographic is going to win the election. And I hate to say it, but it's probably going to be Marco Rubio. But here's the thing. The guy in the video confronting Hillary Clinton, he said, "Look, we got to do things to change the heart and minds of people, and confront racism." And he asked Hillary Clinton, "What are you going to do about that?" And you know what Hillary Clinton said? She goes, "I don't believe you change hearts and minds. I believe you change laws." That's what she said.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just like, oh, dude. First of all, highly disrespectful to say that, because we all know that we do have to change the hearts and minds, because changing laws doesn't fix anything. The perfect point made in the article is the Civil Rights Act, which passed in 1964, and by what Hillary Clinton is claiming in this video, the Civil Rights Act should have ended racism, right? The Civil Rights Act should have fixed everything. Yeah. Segregation should have ended. Racism should have ended. Inequality would have ended with the Civil Rights Act, because that's what, in theory, that's what it was supposed to accomplish. But the fact of the matter is that segregation, arguments can be made that segregation to this day is even worse than it was pre-1964, because of zoning laws, because of economic inequality, because of
culture too, Nick. Think about the media. Think about what they put out. Think about the narrative they're trying to tell about how a person's skin color derives, their character. And those things were all just laughable when you had Martin Luther King saying the opposite to huge crowds. But now you have people watching it every day and believing it.
Exactly. And now you have pawns like, what's his name? Jesse Jackson and what's that other idiot's name?
That idiot Sharpton. All these fake ass activists.
Exactly, and they're sold by the media as, oh, these are the civil rights leaders, but in reality, we know they're not. In fact, there was a video from Ferguson where Al Sharpton showed up, and Al Sharpton gets heat now everywhere he goes from black activists. There was a guy that rolled up on Al Sharpton and told him, get the hell out of Ferguson. A black dude told Sharpton to get the hell out, because now people are seeing through this mirage, which is this false civil rights movement, and now you have a real civil rights movement rising up in the Black Lives Matter movement, the police accountability movement, and now everything is being done to try to smash that movement apart and try to turn it in against itself, and try to, a lot of stuff that we saw happen with the Black Panthers is what they're trying to reincarnate into the Black Lives Matter movement. Hopefully they're successful with it.
And then you can tell who's real, like Cornel West. He gets, arrested. And you'll see who's really fighting for the people. They're in jail.
Exactly, man. Exactly. And so, Hillary Clinton is just way off. But what it really does show is that her philosophy, is that she thinks that you can write laws to fix cultural issues, because racism, albeit is in many ways is pushed as a narrative from the establishment, it has turned into a cultural issue because many people are racist because of their culture that they're raised in. I mean, DB, you're from San Diego. You know all about East County. There's a town out in the East County of San Diego called Santee, but people call it Clan T because there's so many racists out there. I mean, there is a cultural racism going on, and that's why the activists from Black Lives Matter is right. We got to confront it. We got to beat them at the hearts and the minds. We can't beat them through legislation. I mean, legislation many times just makes the problem worse because then it makes people resent it even more. So Hillary Clinton is way off, man. Her theory on basically everything, it kind of goes to show in this interview. She thinks we could legislate our way out of our issues, and that's just not the case. The only thing that's going to make legislators change their minds, like for instance with gay marriage, for instance with legalizing cannabis, is by our opinion as the masses, as the public, getting so strong where you got 60, 65, 70% of people saying, you know what, yeah, let's legalize cannabis now. Then the politicians can no longer ignore it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, Clinton's afraid of hearts and minds being changed, because when hearts and minds changed, they see through, like you said, this veneer of corporatism that's taken over the country, and she's very much a figurehead in that. So she has everything to lose by changing hearts and minds, and everything to gain by continuing to hide behind laws. So that video clip is so illustrative. It's everything you need to know about Hillary Clinton in a nutshell.
And you know what else came out that's damning? It's a good thing you brought that up, Jake, because there was another clip where Netanyahu said 9/11 is the best thing that ever happened for Israel. And the layers are starting to unravel. All these people are in bed. All these people are paying for their profits with our blood, literally. And we can't allow this same paradigm to continue because it leads to World War III, and we're not going to survive that.
Sorry, man.
That was a reptilian. On the other
we had a reptilian caller that just interrupted what you were saying. Go ahead and continue.
I think he shapeshifted. You may proceed, DB.
Hey, I'm going to shapeshift into. I mean, we hate to bring him up because you figure he plays the same game, but Bernie Sanders said, I'm going to tell you things you don't want to hear because we know the system's got to change. And that alone, what he just kind of released, that statement said, there is some actual grassroots kind of change. They can't buy everyone off. There's some people that their heart doesn't have it in them to take the money. They want to make the world a better place.
You're right, man. I think that, and look, I don't have any illusions about Bernie Sanders, but I do think there are. I think one out of 1,000 cops has his heart in the right place, and I think 1 out of 1,000 politicians has his heart in the right place, and I think Bernie Sanders is one of those. But anyway, this is off topic.
Again, Sanders is not going to be given a chance to win, right? We know that.
But he's going to make some very interesting points.
And I disagree with Bernie Sanders in many points, but I've said this before on the show. He's going to bring a conversation up, just like Ron Paul brought a conversation up back in 2012. That is going to be very constructive, right. And it's something that can build. This is the stuff that movements are built out of. And that's going to be.
Rand Paul, of course, doesn't have a 30-year history of saying the same thing.
Yeah, and Rand Paul, I mean, he's trying to play the game, and he's played it way too much because now he's lost his own supporters because he played the game too much, and he just had a bad strategy. His dad's strategy was even better, even though his dad never had a chance in hell. It was better because he had principles and he inspired a bunch of people. But, unfortunately, Rand is not an inspiring figure. He just flip-flop. He thinks he can play the game. When the game is he's just not part of that club. And I think Carlin kind of talks about that. We're going to jump into that, too, because we got some interesting news on Carlin. First, while we're on this police issue, we're going to have another guest coming on in a few minutes to talk about another issue that's really big. So I got to get through this pretty quick. We got an article here. Actually, in fact, the journalist that's going to call in a little while actually wrote this article as well. Claire Bernice with the Anti-Media, awesome journalist that we have, covered a story out of Gloucester. I don't know how to pronounce it, Massachusetts, where several months ago, Carrie Wedler another one of our journalists covered this story about how this one police department was going to stop prosecuting heroin addicts or people being caught with heroin because the police chief realized, like, it finally dawned on him, look, heroin addiction is not a criminal problem. It's not a criminality problem. It's a medical issue, and we're going to treat it as such. And so this one town in Gloucester, Massachusetts, decided that they're no longer going to treat drug addicts as criminals. Instead, if the drug addicts come to the police station, turn themselves in, they won't be arrested. They're going to be assigned a quote-unquote angel, a person that's going to help become their mentor, and they're going to be they're going to help get put through rehab, and they're going to get treatment, and they're going to find a way out of the addiction, which is exactly what Portugal is actually doing as well, and having great results. So now it's several months into this program, and now what we're starting to see from this program is that overdose rates in this town are plummeting. The amount of people turning themselves in is going up. People are getting treatment. Addiction rates are starting to go down. People from around the world, around the country, as far away as California. Someone from California went all the way to this town to go turn himself into this police department so that he can get help. And now, they're getting creative with the with the funding. They're getting people to pitch in. They're getting nonprofits to help cover the costs. In fact, over 100 people have already taken advantage of this program, and it's only cost the city $5,000. $5,000, and it helped 100 people start the process of getting off of heroin. And
that's not enough money, Nick. That's why it's illegal.
For real, man. And like, this is an actually really positive story. And here's the great part. There's at least 3 other cities in that vicinity that are now looking at that program and saying, oh, this is awesome. We're going to start applying this exact program in our own communities. You know what I'm saying? So this is something that could start catching on. And man, I mean, if Big Pharma doesn't get in the way, you could start seeing this start turning into you might start see it happening nationally, where we start, individual police departments might start looking at addiction as a health issue rather than a criminality issue, man. And this is really the first step that we need to start taking to defeat the war on drugs. Because the war on drugs is all about making money for these private prison industries. It's about making money for the prison unions. It's about keeping Big Pharma making a bunch of money because they make money from people being addicted to Oxycontin, shit like that. They also make money from people not being able to use cannabis oil to treat their illnesses and things like that. If you follow the paper trail, you'll see that they lobby the Big Pharma corporations lobby the government to keep all these the war on drugs in place. This one town may very well be the first, outside of the whole cannabis legalization thing, because cannabis is one thing, and it's easy for people to be okay with cannabis because everybody smokes that shit. Everyone knows it's harmless. But people are really stigmatized about harder drugs like meth and heroin and, crack and things like that. But these are all things that are not criminal issues. These are just things there's people that get addicted to things. Plenty of people are addicted to alcohol. Plenty of people are addicted to cigarettes. Plenty of people are addicted to gambling. Plenty of people are addicted to a lot of shit. Shit, I'm addicted to Facebook. But am I thrown in jail for it? No, I'm not. And these are the ideas that we got to start pushing forward, is that, we don't got to throw people in jail for being addicted, because that's not a criminal behavior. It's a health behavior, and we can figure out ways to deal with it that doesn't involve creating the largest prison population that's ever existed. And that's exactly what we have right now.
Nick, you should go to prison for your Facebook addiction.
Yeah, you know what? I should go to prison just to experience it. I've actually been pretty careful about getting myself thrown in jail. I used to do a lot of illegal things when I was younger, and
go on, tell us more.
I'm not going to say anything about the stuff I do now. But I'm lucky that I didn't get in there, because here's the problem with when you go to jail. There's something like a 75% rate of people that go to jail that end up winding up going right back in. You know what I'm saying? And so I think Claire is joining us now from 513. And Claire, is there anything else you want to add about this this story from Massachusetts before we go on to this next big story that we're going to talk to you about?
I just think that it's a brilliant plan. I mean, treating everybody like they're criminals for any sort of addictive behavior, it just doesn't get anybody anywhere. And it creates more of a problem because, there are plenty of drugs available inside jail and prison, so it's not as if, sending somebody to prison is going to suddenly erase that problem.
Exactly, and that's so true. I mean, that's one of the there was a meme going around that was created by the Free Thought Project about how they got this war on drugs. They're going to ban drugs and throw people in jail for doing drugs. When these guys get the drugs while they're in jail, it's like, what in the hell? How are we going to stop the drugs if they can get the drugs while they're in prison? Everyone's familiar with the Sandra Bland case. The cops, the people at the jail were trying to say that she was on marijuana that she ingested while in jail, and as if that's an excuse for why she committed suicide.
Search the prison guards' butts, Nick.
I'm in favor of that. I normally don't, I'm normally not in favor of privacy invasion, but we might as well do it. Now, Claire's got a huge story that we're going to go into in a second. First, I want to go to a caller we have on the line from 206. What did you want to talk about? Did you want to comment on any of the previous things we were going into, or do you have anything new to add to this, or what's going on?
Hey, what's up, man? It's Cassius.
Hey, what's up, Cassius? How you doing?
Doing great, man. I like the topic at hand. I've been thinking about the prisons today after I wrote that article about the man that was beaten to death in prison, who I found out upon inspecting the article, he was on antidepressants. And I think that was a significant role in why the man was delusional in the first place. So that's what's on my mind.
He should have used ayahuasca.
Yeah, anything but what they force you to take in prison, that's crazy. Like, I learned a lot this morning about forced medication in prisons and a 1990 Supreme Court ruling that basically said they could do it. And since then, it's expanded a lot, and it's just another disturbing facet of this. I like what, I don't know who said it, but just a minute ago, someone said, maybe I'd have to go to prison to feel what it's like. And I'm like, yeah, I was thinking that exact same thing today, because, we're pretty sheltered from the harsh realities of prison, some of us, and, we need to know.
Yeah, man, and the fact of the matter is that a huge percentage of the people in prison are more or less victimless criminals. You had a bunch of people that got caught using drugs, people that got caught selling drugs. That all kind of boils down to this overriding theme of a war against people of color and the war against the poorer classes. I wrote an article recently about how the war on drugs is basically a war on urban innovation, because many of these drug dealers are just, many of these young drug dealers are just entrepreneurs that just are pretty much stuck in a really sad situation where they have a really bad economic situation, and they're smart enough to learn, they know that they got to provide for their families, et cetera, and so since they have hardly, a poor education, they've got basically no money, but they know that they know how to make money one way or another. They wind up selling drugs to try to make ends meet, and guess what? They wind up in prison for a very, very long time, where they get institutionalized and brainwashed and forcefully medicated, as you mentioned. And it's just a long, vicious cycle that hopefully this town in Massachusetts can be the shining light in the darkness that can help us bring us out of this drug war mentality, man. And everybody pretty much knows a drug war is a bad idea. Hillary Clinton pretends that she knows it's a bad idea, while at the same time taking money from the private prison industry that keeps the war on drugs, keeps it going. Anyway, we got to move on to this next story, because Claire has some really big information, and I just want to keep everyone up to date, because we're working on a huge story that's going to be ready relatively soon. We don't want to put a date on it yet, because we're working a couple angles here. But Claire,
awesome.
What's the latest development in Nestle? Because your article last week on Nestle made it to the front page of Reddit Politics, got a lot of attention, a lot of people reached out. But the last article was basically talking about how the guy that was overseeing the fact that Nestle was allowed to ream us in California for our water for very, very little money. 2 years later, he retired, and then 2 years later he went on to work for Nestle. So Claire, what's the latest update?
Well, okay, it looks like there is a much bigger picture here than what might appear on the surface. This Gene Zimmerman, who was he was the one who retired and became a consultant for Nestle, but he might have made a couple of questionable mistakes, maybe ethically, by doing so. But he's just, one single person in this really huge issue that looks like there is rather extensive government corruption, because Nestle's permit, has been expired since 1988. And nothing ever really came of any reviews for that permit or anything else, even when attention was focused on that and pointed out, to the appropriate authorities. And since nothing has really come of it, it looks as if from the people actually actively working on it who used to be in the Forest Service, that there is somebody kind of up the food chain, if you will, who is making sure that nothing really happens with this permit. Like, the review never happens, the environmental impact studies just don't happen. It's as if we've reached a stopping point, and there seems to be a reason why, but we have yet to figure out exactly what that is. So that's what we're looking into right now.
Awesome. And,
nice.
This is a huge topic right now because California's in the middle of a record drought, and we're running out of water. And you got, it's the biggest state in the country. Got like over 30 million people out here, and we're pretty much running out of water. In a year from now, we're going to be pretty much out, and people are wondering, okay, well, what the hell are we going to do about the water? And so now this is becoming, increased scrutiny is falling on people that are extracting the water at great, in huge amounts. Now, we all know that the average Joe in California is being screwed over. Now, if I had a lawn, if I didn't live in an apartment and I had a lawn out front and I decided I wanted to water it during the day, and if a cop drove by, well, now we got water police here in California.
Just put those black plastic balls on your lawn, Nick.
Exactly. You know what I mean? So
and you have drought shamers too, the people who go around and film people with green lawns and stuff like that, saying you must have enough money to just pay the fines. It's like what, $500, I think, if you are overwatering.
Yeah, exactly. And so
we know which houses to break into now.
If I got caught watering my lawn, I would pay $500 a fine because I'm watering my lawn during the day. Now, here's the ironic part of this whole thing. As Claire has helped uncover, as well as the Desert Sun from out here in the desert, Nestle, for one of these permits that they're extracting 26 million gallons of water from, they're only paying $500 a year. You know what I'm saying? How long would it take one family to use 26 million gallons of water?
It's like 68,000 gallons of water a day that they're extracting. And there are actually several questionable circumstances besides the fact that they are doing this within Forest Service property on an expired permit, and they say that they're following the guidelines of this expired permit. But nobody can really prove that because, like I said, these reviews and this environmental impact studies have never gotten underway. Like, they keep coming into the planning stages, and every time it looks like it's going to cost too much money, then it's just dropped, and they say pretty much, Nestle, just go ahead and do what you want because this is too much hassle.
Exactly.
So
I just like to say,
it's horrible.
I think that we're doing a really important thing here as citizens overseeing this hunting and looking for corruption and finding it, and then this is a really important societal mechanism that we're delving into right now. If we expand this and continue on this path and improve our methods of digging out corruption, then we can find solutions. We're in a stage of infancy with this, but we're doing good. Like, much props, Claire. That's real.
Thank you. Well, I mean, that's the hope. The hope is that actually looking into this and trying to find exactly what the problem is, exactly why they're getting away with this, will actually cause a change, a real change to happen. And even the water rights that Nestle claims to have since, the late 1800s, those are a little bit in question, too, because it's odd that for some reason Nestle and the government have been very secretive about all of the conditions of why they are allowed to keep drawing water from this spring, supposedly. So I guess, well, the thing is, we're not even sure that what they're drawing is necessarily 100% spring water like they say that it is. So, I mean, just there are so many questions in this story. It's just unbelievable. And if it could have an impact, I don't know, I would say like nationwide perhaps, because this is a perfect example of corporate corruption, collusion with the government, and even when, individuals and families are held responsible for their permits and they have to spend thousands of dollars to get tanks to tank in the water instead of drawing water from the spring, and we're talking individual families, and yet this enormous corporation is drawing 68,000 gallons every single day from this spring and getting away with it without any penalty or anything. This is a problem. Clearly something is wrong and somebody is making this happen.
Exactly.
So,
and go ahead, DB.
I was just going to say, just from my own experience up here in the north, there's a lot of capped wells inside houses. And I think, as we kind of devolve as far as decentralizing everything and rebuilding from a community level, that's got to be something that's, provided by a government stipend. If there's groundwater to be taken, every single home should have a deep well. Yeah, maybe you monitor or whatever, but it should only be for infrastructure improvement. Everybody should have access to water and not have to pay these megalithical asshole corporations.
That's very important to say. Creating our own structures for the future and getting our own paradigm of having wells, making our own new paradigm where we have these things, I think that's the stage of humanity that we're in. You know what I mean? Or we're approaching, at least.
You guys both bring up a great point there, and back to this Nestle story, and as Claire mentioned, there was at least, the whole excuse given by the Forest Service about why they didn't make Nestle renew this permit. Now, keep in mind, when Nestle first got this, the last time they actually, obtained this permit, I think was back in the 70s, and this is before the age of, bottled water being, individually, retail bottled water actually being sold to people. Yeah, they used to bottle water back in the day for huge ass tanks and stuff like that. But now bottled water has become a multi-billion, and in fact, it's probably hundreds of billions if you include globally, speaking. It's a huge industry. And so this permit is so far out of date that it predates the bottled water industry. And so they're still paying rates for water that is not even it's not even the marketplace isn't even considered in the price that they're paying for this permit. Now, here's the thing that really slapped me in the face from this whole story is that there was 300 permits that they did review in this area where Nestle's pulling this water. And guess who they were for? Little tiny cabins, people that own cabins, as DB was saying, people should have a right to water and tap into the groundwater, tap into these streams. Guess what? They made these cabins renew their permits, and a lot of these cabins got denied their permit and were forced to truck the water in, as Claire was saying. I mean, this just slaps me in the face.
Because they're not up to BS code.
An inside source tells me that those cabin owners who had been there for years drawing water just for their own purposes, had to pay almost nearly $10,000 a piece just to have the tanks installed so that they can truck in the water.
That's absolutely ridiculous. We have a caller on the line from 956. I want to go to you real quick. Do you want to comment on the Nestle story, or what do you want to talk about?
Oh, no, yeah, definitely the Nestle story. This is, it's just outrageous, and I don't really understand why, nobody has even bothered to hold the government and Nestle accountable for their actions, because, it's just ridiculous that they're bottling water and selling it back to people who have no water.
And one of the worst things about it is because of Nestle's actions, draining out the aquifer, it's forcing all these agricultural farms to use fracking waste freaking water to get the crops to grow.
Yeah, man, and that's completely ridiculous too.
And, it's also, the caller's right, too, and with the increase in what Nestle is drawing in another area, not the Arrowhead area, but in a separate area, Deer Canyon, in 2013, they drew 56 million gallons of water from that area, but then a year later, they drew 76 million gallons. So they are certainly increasing what they're doing, and it's having a devastating impact on, the ecosystems and the environment there. And there are endangered species there these species weren't even endangered at the time that this permit went into effect. And, even the science of hydrology wasn't even a thing at the time this permit went into effect originally. And we have all these studies. We know all the impacts now. We know what's going on now. But nothing has changed for Nestle. They are still drawing water.
I'd be remiss at this point if I didn't point out a quick reminder, which is that the number one absolute waste of water is in the country and in California is still, what is it? Animal agriculture.
That's true, man. That's true, and we can't brush that aside either. But this Nestle thing is it's so rife with corruption. And as Claire mentioned, there's been several attempts locally here in Southern California to try to get to the bottom of this and, get down and, figure out why, okay, let's actually go look into the permitting and stuff. But it hits like a glass ceiling once it heads up the ladder. You know what I'm saying? So it's like these local forestry officials, most of them probably are legitimately trying to protect the environment. I mean, and that's what their job is. But as soon as they try to make any moves that may harm Nestle's bottom line, they get stonewalled as soon as they go up the chain of command. And so this is a major issue. Now, I don't want to forget to mention that we have another article coming out tomorrow on the Nestle topic. We have a series. Claire's working on a series of articles because at first we thought it was going to be one article, and then now the more we start digging into this, the more people start coming forward and talk to us about it. We're starting to realize that we're going to have to put out a series of articles tomorrow. The next installment of the Nestle series that questioning their corruption, digging into it, is going to come out. Make sure you guys look for that on the antimedia.org. We have another caller on the line from 206. I want to go to you really quick. We're coming up to the end of the show, though. What do you want to talk about? 206. Dropping 206. I mean, that was a great little speech there, but no one can hear it.
That was great.
Well, I've got a quick question because you all are out in California, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you all using that technology that I don't know how long it's been out, but apparently it can convert sea salt water into potable water?
Desalination plants? Desalination plant? A desalination plant, like right on the ocean?
Well, I'm not too sure. Like, I know I've read about this thing. It's actually a very small thing. It looks like maybe like a I don't know, like a flower pot or something. Like
yeah. We covered it on the anti-media. We're not using it. We're not using it here, but it's a little desalination kettle, open source. I forget what it's called, but that is a great technology. And here's the thing, man, is that we, as DB mentioned, we need to start breaking away from this highly centralized process that we deal with right now. Here, where I'm at, we deal with a municipal water organization that's a government organization, and we're basically subject to their will, and we have to deal with their water, and we have to deal with the fact that they put fluoride in our water, whether we like it or not. We don't really have the option. But that's a great point, man. There's plenty of alternative ways of getting water, whether it's capturing fog, which is a process they're using down in Peru, or these micro desalination apparatuses, or whether it's even bigger desalination plants. All of these things are options to break away from relying on this water grid. We're coming to the end of the show here, guys. Thank you all for calling in. Claire, awesome talk. BB, peace. Caller from 956. Happy to have you back, man. You called in on Monday. Call us back on next Monday.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.